Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bonnie, and I'm on the events team here at Brookline Booksmith. Today it is, of course, my pleasure to host James Bird for the release of his book, No Place Like Home, in conversation with Adriana Mather. A huge thank you to the Indigenous People Celebration Committee of Brookline for co-sponsoring this event. You'll hear a little bit from them in just a minute, but first, I just want to introduce our authors and thank you all for being here, supporting James, Adriana, and our author event series. Before introductions, I have just a few housekeeping notes. If you'd like to buy a copy of the book, you can do so at the back counter over there. You'll see a big stack of books, and that's the spot. Secondly, please keep your phones off or on silent for the reading, and thank you for being respectful to our authors. The event is being live streamed on the iPad right by this column here. Hello, YouTube. The audience shouldn't be visible to our live stream viewers, but if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just don't walk in front of it and you'll be okay. And now for the fun part. It is my pleasure to introduce our authors and tell you a bit about the wonderful book that we are here to celebrate. Our conversation partner tonight is Adriana Mather, the New York Times bestselling author of the How to Hang a Witch series, which is in part inspired by Adriana's family connection to the Salem witch trials. Her family has roots that go back to the Revolutionary War, with ties to Sleepy Hollow and the Titanic, and this history often influences her work. She's also the author of the Killing November series, and has most recently penned 2 swoon-worthy romance novels, Mom-Com, which is coming out in November, and The Breakup Artist, due in 2024. She's also an actor and producer and co-owns Zombot Pictures, a production company that makes feature films, which she co-founded with James, and the producer and composer Anya Remizova. In addition to Zombot Pictures, another thing that Adriana and James have in common is they're married. So it's wonderful to have you both here. Thank you for joining us. And of course, tonight's author, James Bird, is a screenwriter and director at the aforementioned independent film company, Zombot Pictures. His writing career began with screenplays like Eat, Spirit, Eat, We Are Boats, and Honey Glue. He made his middle grade debut with The Brave, which was featured on the 2020 New York Public Library Best Books for Kids list, and was a Book Riot Best Book of 2020. Among much other praise, his second book, The Second Chance of Benjamin Waterfalls, was a 2023 Lone Star Reading List selection and recommended by the School Library Journal. A California native of Ojibwe descent, he now lives in Swampscott with, of course, Adriana and their son. And his latest novel, No Place Like Home, came out yesterday. So congratulations, James. To tell you all a bit about the book we're here to celebrate, No Place Like Home is a middle grade novel about one family's struggle with homelessness as they make their way toward a better life. Open lives with his brother MJ and mother in their family car, which of course makes life very unpredictable. They're making their way to Los Angeles, where they hope an uncle and a new life are waiting. But MJ has taken to disappearing during their stops, and his impulsiveness has his family very worried. Then Open finds a stray dog who needs him as much as he needs her, but shelters don't allow dogs, and he longs more than ever for a place to call home. This is a beautiful and essential story, full of difficult topics, but always maintaining an undercurrent of hope. In a starred review, Publishers Weekly called the book a deeply felt ode to familial love. Our lead character's palpable fears, joys, and unrelenting hope buoy this tale of resilience. In a minute, we're so excited to get to hear him speak about it, but first I would love to hand it off to Felina Silver Robinson to speak a little bit about the Indigenous People Celebration Committee and what they do here in Brookline. Thank you all so much.
Both of you, and thank you for joining us here. And I'm so proud that our committee is co-sponsoring this event. The Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee has only been around for a few years here in Brookline, but it is and was our intent to educate town members of what it is to be Indigenous and what Indigenous people have suffered, and to take some responsibility for what might have happened. One thing that we've accomplished was getting a land acknowledgement done, which I have the pleasure of reading the first night of each town meeting member now, and at any occasion that someone might ask me. But I want to just also say to you both that I admire the work that you have done together as a couple, and I think it's amazing, and to produce such a nice gem that you get to carry into the future is an amazing thing. So thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. If this is on or not, it doesn't matter, I can project.
Okay,
So, am I?
That's my fault.
There we go. Thank you. Really appreciate it. We're so happy to be here. And definitely, this is our best work by far. But we do love writing and filmmaking and all the other things. It's quite fun. James is, as long as I've known him, and I have known him now for 16 and a half years, he has been a writer, and he started writing screenplays. And I tried. I wrote a very funny screenplay. It had no plot. It was going nowhere. But I did enjoy making movies, and we've done a lot of that together. And then I started writing books. And so I copied him in the screenplay, and then he copied me in the book writing. And so now we are just writing all the things. He still writes screenplays, he also writes middle grades, and one thing that I love about him, and I find very endearing, is that when he wrote his first middle grade, he said, you know, I think I've written a truly profound adult novel. And then everybody read it and they said, you have written a novel for 8 to 12-year-olds. And I just love that because, you know, the thing is, he is an adult who embodies the whimsy and the wonder and the hope of an 8 to 12-year-old. And I think that that actually describes you really well. Is this pointing at the thing? Is this what's happening? Okay. And this book is no exception. This book, is maybe the most hopeful piece of writing that I have ever read. I'm already getting emotional. I want to read you his author's note because I think that it's really important because this book mirrors in many ways his own childhood. And so this was probably his hardest book to write, but I think one of the most important that he has to give. So I'm going to try to get through the author's note. I will likely get teary and then I will pass it to him, but he prefers that I start it. Is that right, husband?
Yeah, you'll.
All right, I'll start. I'm ready. Here we go. When I was a kid, I thought my childhood was normal. It was all I knew. It was my world and I had no one else's world to compare it to. It wasn't until I got much older and was able to look back at my past from a distance that I realized that my childhood wasn't normal. I grew up from the bottom. I've been homeless, lived in a car, stayed in shelters, crashed on couches, been on the run from Child Protective Services, and have been evicted more times than I can count. But like my Native American ancestors who came before me, against all odds, I survived. Sorry.
I am still here. I hope when you finish reading my story, you will look at your own childhood. I hope when you finish reading the story, you will look at your own childhood and at all the hardships you faced and still face, and all the battles you encountered and still do. And you are finally able to put down your armor and shake off all the pain on your shoulders, because like me, you are where you are today because of what you endured. Life is a trip. It is filled with bumpy roads, dead ends, and dark tunnels. But if you keep moving forward and keep your eyes on the road, over time, you'll notice those roads get a little smoother. Those dead ends become U-turns, allowing you to turn around and try again. And there's a light at the end of those dark tunnels. A I'm not saying life is going to be easy. In fact, at times it will be very difficult. But if you keep fighting, you'll end up reaching the place you're driving toward. The place where we all are trying to get to. And that place is called home. And what is home? It is defined by a place where one lives. And if you're reading these words, that means you survived whatever your past threw at you. You're still here. You're still alive. Home is not only a place. Home is being, for me, a father, a husband, an author, a filmmaker. Because that is who I am and where I am in my life. I am my happy home. So remember, our childhoods tell us who we were, who we once were, but we decide who we are now and where we are today. We build our home. We are where we live.
So I think that tells you so much about the heart of this story, but also the heart of the man. And so why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how you came to write this story?
So I came to write it because my other two books before this are kind of magical realism, like a lot of fantasy based, and my editor told me when we talked on the phone, she's like, you always avoid your childhood and you mask it in these fantasies, and so why don't you actually try writing that story, you know, your childhood. And I guess I've always been avoiding it, so I gave it a shot. I wrote like 2 or 3 chapters in like 2 days, sent it, and they read it and said, okay, we're buying this book, let's do this. So that's what I had to be talked into it.
So what can you tell us about you as a person that's in this book? Like how close is this story to your own life?
Well, the main character, I guess, 100% is me. I grew up in a car with my family, traveling from I put the exact route in the book, from Northern California all the way down to Southern California. I made it a game. My mom and I made it a game of, you know, Child Protective Services. If, you know, we're Native American, so if police or they came to our door, we would pretend that they're the U.S. Cavalry and try to find a way out of there, and usually through bathroom windows or little patios. How we got food was another game. We would pull out our invisible bow and arrows and go through fast food restaurants. And you know how a lot of people don't take their food tray to the trash? They leave it on the tables. And so I would pretend to shoot the buffalo, which is the food, and then we'd stuff it in a bag while my mom is up at the counter getting water or talking. And that's how we got our food. And we did the same thing at grocery stores. So a lot of my childhood is direct in that book.
What was it like writing it again? What was it like revisiting all of this?
Well, as a kid, I didn't know it was weird. I didn't know it was different, I guess. I thought it was normal, and we moved around so much that I didn't have any friends my age that I could compare my life to. And usually if we did get a place, we lived in really bad neighborhoods, so if I did get a friend for a couple days, that friend never had a dad, you know, and I never had a dad, so there was no one to really ask, or anyone to comment on my childhood for me to think it's weird or anything. So only as an adult, now that I look back and now that I have a kid, I realize like I had it very bad. or not bad, but just very uncommon. Or maybe it is common and that's sad too. So I had it strange.
Yes, certainly. And you've put so much positivity into this book. There's so much hope in here. And I think, well, this is certainly my favorite of his books. And one of the reasons is that I think it's so important for kids, especially for ones who don't have a voice, right? Because when you were a kid, you didn't get to say all of the things that were going on. You didn't even have perspective on them. And to put them in a book where a child can access them, and if they're going through something similar, could see their story here, I think is beautiful. But also for others who haven't lived your story, to understand it, to see it, to know that maybe that the kid in their class who has shoes that are dirty and their clothes have holes and they're, maybe they don't have a backpack, that there could be other things happening in their lives. So I think that this story is really a story of compassion, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, about the hope and the compassion that you imbued into this story.
Yeah, I think so. As a kid, when I did get to go to school, I was definitely the one that had the duct tape. I probably smelled bad. If kids had raincoats, we cut a hole in the trash bag and wore a trash bag. But I had an older brother, and he was going through the same thing. And luckily, a lot of the times, if we did get teased, he would just beat them up. And so the teasing part never really kicked in. Like, I think that would have bothered me a lot. But I fortunately had a brother that would beat up anyone that teased me and then beat me up for not beating them up. So I was grateful for him, but also scared of him growing up, because he was dealing with it in a violent way. I was dealing with it I probably escaped through imagination. So I would pretend none of it's real, or pretend I'm on some adventure, or pretend it's a game that I have to pass. And that's probably how I dealt with it.
You've obviously your entire life you've told stories and engaged in stories. And what does it? How do you think about stories? Like, because this is your life. You dedicate yourself to telling stories to others. Why do you do it?
So when I was little, like, if we had nothing, my mom would actually say, "Oh, we have everything because we're Native American. Everything you see is actually ours, because this was just stolen from us, but we're getting it back inch by inch or toy by toy when I was a kid." But so I guess.
Why you tell stories?
Oh, so another part of it is I was obsessed with Native Americans because I didn't know my dad, and I only knew my mom, and every neighborhood we lived in was either Mexican or African American, and so we were the only Native American family around. So I feel like I had to be the representation of Native Americans, and I felt like when I was little, my mom would always say, our ancestor, like, "Oh, we're alone in a car, in a parking lot," but it may feel like we're on our own, but there's, hundreds of warriors next to us that we just don't see. Our ancestors are right there. So I had that in my head all growing up, that everything I was going through, it looked like it was just me, but I had a whole, band of warriors with me, and they told stories, and they're the, original storytellers, and everything is passed down through stories instead of written word. And so I felt like every story that they've ever told in the past is all in my head. It was given to me, and I didn't know how to pull it out. So that's why I started writing, and I kept writing, because that's how all their stories come out.
And there's a dog in the book who you can see on the front cover. And just a fun fact for everybody, that is basically our dog. Our dog, whose name is Banana. The dog in this book is named Bonnie, but did you write this dog in for Banana?
Yeah, and we rescued that dog. That dog was homeless too, so.
Yeah, Banana was homeless too. Do you want to tell them anything else on the cover that is accurate for your...
So this is the red Pinto that I grew up in, and I found out that they don't make Pintos anymore because I guess they were blowing up on people. But yeah, that's.
And there's some significance to all of the cars that you have?
Oh yeah, and a cool thing that I just learned while talking about this is, I always believed all the cars that we grew up in, all the cars that I lived in. Since I'm Native American, my mom and I would always call every car or vehicle our horse. And just now that I'm an adult, growing up, looking back, all the cars that we had, like a Pinto and a Bronco and a Colt, they're all horses in real life. So that's something interesting that I didn't know.
So what would you hope that people would get from reading this book?
I hope, I guess, compassion. Like, there's funny things. Like, now that I'm an adult, if I eat somewhere, I will consciously not put my food in the trash because I wonder if there's going to be a kid. Like, I've done that ever since I met you. Or if I have a drink, I'll never throw my drink away. I'll always just put it right next to the trash or on a curb. Because when I was a kid going to school, that's how I ate, and that's how I did things. So, but my hope is for enough people to kind of read this and make that not a possibility. Like having enough compassion of people in power to help, because like the homelessness has just gotten worse since I've grown up in America. There was like very little funding to help families, and that funding is even lower now in America. There's less shelters now in America, which is crazy because there's like 10 times more homeless people. So I guess my hope is for people's brains to start working the other way around and start like looking to help people instead of pretending the problem's not there.
One of the things while reading this book that really struck me was that there's so many catch-22s for people who are in situations like James's, where his mother couldn't get a job without a permanent address because they had no place to send the checks, and they wouldn't give you a job otherwise. But at the same time, you couldn't get an apartment without a job. So these types of things put you in a terrible situation because there's no exact winning, right? And reading this book, I saw that there was actually a lot of that you would do the things that you were supposed to do, but because of technicalities, you would be put at a disadvantage and couldn't actually accomplish whatever it was. So as an adult looking back, what would you say to other kids that have these types of difficult situations?
I'd say, well, okay, so when I was a kid, I had a lot of friends, in similar situations, like if I had friends from shelters or friends from a school that I was at for a little bit, and those schools were always really bad neighborhoods because it was the cheapest place, or places that took hotel vouchers or motel vouchers, which are probably the worst areas of any city. And so a lot of the kids I knew, I tried to keep in contact with, and a lot of them either went into gangs, or got killed, or are in jail right now, prison right now. And I always looked back thinking, why didn't I? Well, I almost did a few times when I was a kid, but why didn't I go down that route? And I think it's what I would tell kids in these situations is, I think it's to be not only optimistic, but trust your imagination. Trust no one in the world knows the key or knows the right answer to anything. We all just try, and a lot of people try better than others. But I think if I gave up, I would be where my friends were or are. And I guess I never gave up, so I think the hope for kids to have in reading this book is to never give up, try to find a way to make it a game, try to find a way to make it you know, like the Hunger Game, make it a survival game. Like that's how I got through, and then I started learning how to have fun with it, and I started learning to try to find ways out of it. It's like if someone's in a, like Count of Monte Cristo, like if someone's in a prison or Shawshank Redemption, you just gotta, it's not gonna be fun because where you are, but if you have like a little spoon, you just dig and dig and dig and dig, and you'll find your way out. And it's the people that stop digging and get tired that stay in prison. And my whole motivation is, once I start getting old enough to realize, oh, I'm poor, I'm homeless, I'm, you know, hungry, like all that stuff that started reality kicking in, that's what just made me dig harder. And a lot of people, that made them stop digging because they gave up. But so just keep on digging would be my.
You pursued a lot of creative things. Once because you moved to LA after, well, how old were you?
I moved to LA during high school.
During high school, right. He's done fashion photography, he went to fashion school, he has been a writer, a director, he was an actor for a while, which is amazing to me because he had opportunities that nobody has. Somehow his optimism and hope is infectious. People feel so comfortable telling him their worst moments, you know, and it's beautiful because they see him as a place of safety and non-judgment. And so you bring that into your books, but also your creativity. As an actor, he's so shy, and so he would be in these big auditions, and he would walk in, and they would have a camera set up, and they would say, all right, go ahead, you can start. And he'd say, I actually forgot something in my car. And he would walk out and he would never come back, which is how he wound up on the writer's side of things as opposed to the acting side, right? Right. But what has creativity done for you in your life? Because it was a really important part of your childhood, and it is pretty much your main focus of your adulthood.
Okay, so when I was little, my mom I got horrible grades. I think I had a learning disability. I learned way different than everyone else. So I couldn't keep up with the normal class, the normal school teachings. So my mom would always say, like, you know, if 20 teachers called you dumb, that just means you have 20 dumb teachers. You know, you're right, they're wrong. And I believed that my whole life. And I don't really know why, but even when I got to high school, I had a guidance counselor in 10th grade, and she said, and this was in Orange County, California, and she said, I've never said this to a student before, and I'll probably never say it again, but I am telling you, drop out of high school and go to Hollywood right now. Like, you will do better than all of us. So, I never had anyone believe in me like that. That wasn't my mom, so that's what I did. I just dropped out that day and moved to Hollywood. And there, I saw so many people living their dreams and passions, or pursuing it, that I kind of just pursued all of them. And and I haven't stopped since.
I don't know how are we doing on time? I'm not sure.
You have about like 5-10 minutes if you look at the.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to leave time for questions, so, okay. What would you, do you think that you're gonna write a sequel to this? I'm curious, I actually wanna know too, because this was a very difficult book for him to write. And although I think it is incredibly important, I'm curious if you're thinking that you might continue this story because you have so much from your childhood that is worth telling in a story.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I do grow up, so I guess I'll put it. A few more years up, and each couple of years I'll make a book for the next. Pretty soon I'll catch up to myself when I'm old.
There you go. Is there anything else that you would like to say about this story or about your life that you think that you'd like to share?
It's actually a funny book.
It does have some good humor.
Yeah, that's about it.
All right.
Thank you both so much for your discussion
Absolutely.
and for joining us tonight. And now we get to open it up to you all. So if you have any questions for James, feel free to raise your hand and I can call on you. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
It's not so much a question, but a statement that I think it's really important that you wrote this book just because there's not a lot out there for children understanding what it is to be Indigenous. I spoke at legislative agenda about the fact that there's no curriculum anywhere in Massachusetts that I'm aware of that even speaks to being Indigenous, but to learn the experience of an Indigenous family who's homeless, because the homeless, it's every person, doesn't matter who you are, anybody can be homeless, but no one realizes what it symbolizes to be Native American and to be homeless, because doing the land acknowledgement, we were giving back something that was taken. For an Indigenous person to be homeless is just a level of insanity to me that, it's unimaginable. And so I just really appreciate that you took the time to write such a story, and that you could be the person that you are, and that I know your mom did an amazing job, trying to keep her mind off what was happening, and to make you see life in a different way. And that's what holds you the person that you are.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I mean, I think a lot of this, a lot of your story, and a lot of him as a person is perspective. And touching on what you're saying, his perspective through everything, through the hardest moments of his childhood, as an adult, through difficult things, he brings joy. He brings joy, we can do better, and it's really cool. It's amazing to see, because I don't know that other people could bring that to this, and like you said, I think it's an incredibly important story that you told. He's shy, so he's like over here. Like,
Absolutely. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm sorry to say I've not yet read your book, but I was wondering about your mom, having my own history of raising children under difficult circumstances, I was just wondering your thoughts about her and how she appears in the book, and she does, how you develop her character.
Yeah, so my mom, I kept pretty accurate in here. She ran away from, our tribe is the Ojibwe, and we're from Grand Portage, Minnesota. She grew up in Duluth, and at the time, it was in the 50s. At the time, it was a very racist time because the laws were just changing, and even though it was just the 50s, Native Americans were finally getting rights, and women. So she went up against that. So she got kicked out of high school for being, she fell under a loophole. For being Native American, she got kicked out of high school. And it's because if you claim that, when the law at the time was you're not supposed to claim it, even if you are, because it was controversial. So she ran away at 16, and she went to California, and she kind of grew up. She had the mentality that I had, like she faked it until she made it. Like she went to Hollywood Boulevard and told everyone that she's a hairstylist, even though she never cut hair before. And so she got a job as a hairstylist, and the thing is, she was really successful at it because it was Hollywood, so she was very, no one else looked like her. She was Native American, so like she looked like what people thought Pocahontas would be, and she would dance while she cut hair. She was really into music, so if all the other hairstylists cared about the hair and were doing that, she was dancing and smoking and cutting hair, and so she got the attention of Bob Hope, and so she cut Bob Hope. Bob Hope came in to see what it was, and they did this like special to see who this Indian girl who was cutting hair. And she took advantage of the situation. She cut his ear, and he bled everywhere, and just to stand out. And so, but she was dancing so much with him that he actually hired her as a professional dancer for his USO show that traveled the world. So, and then she was known as Lady Chippewa as a dancer. I guess he had a lot of, he'd go to Air Force bases and Navy bases and be dancing. So the way that she took nothing and made it something is kind of exactly how I did it. Looking back, I never actually really made that connection until right now, maybe. But yeah, there was a lot of things. I think she had to play the game just as much as I had to play the game, because she would go insane if she faced reality, and I probably would buckle and not survive if I knew what reality was.
Sounds like a really incredible person. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess it was I don't know what you read at the beginning. Was that the book jacket or the intro? I don't know.
That was the author's note.
The author's note. So you really addressed kids who might be in a similar situation that you found yourself in. I was wondering, because I was thinking about buying this for a middle school kid who faces none of these things at all, and probably never will. So what would you hope, and I would guess there are a lot of kids like that out there, so what would you hope that a child like that might, how they might grow by reading your book?
I think, well, there's a few things in there. Like what I enjoy about it is, I thought, okay, if someone can't relate to this, at least they're your mind will expand by, I put a lot of wordplay in there, and I put a lot of like little hidden messages in there for when I was a kid. I would always look for that stuff, and I would always make wordplay and make messages out of things that, you know, no matter what the kid's status is at home, at least their mind or imagination will be engaged, I think. But I think anybody can, even if you have all the money in the world, you're still, everyone's pretty poor on compassion. And this will kind of feed that. I think that's important, and learning about people that are different from you. I think, you know, the smartest thing anyone can ever do is travel, because you can see how everyone else lives and how everyone's different. And I think a book is a good way to travel if you can't leave your house. Or
Well, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna read it first, I should say, but then pass it on someplace. Yeah.
Beautiful, yeah. Go
Can I
ahead.
just ask, it's not a question,
Well, it is.
is there a part of the book that is outside of the author's note that is your personal favorite part of the book that you enjoy most reading, writing?
I would say the Ninja Turtle part, just because I like Ninja Turtles, but I guess it was fun to read. Like, there's a part in the book where, and it's a true story. It really happened. It was in a place right outside of Oakland. It was a place called Stockton, California. And I was at a park, and I was with a friend that I just met, and I almost thought, like, oh, me and this kid could be best friends. 'Cause he likes comic books, and I had a comic book at the time. And so me and him were playing in the park, and we were walking to the liquor store. And Stockton is, or as it was at one time, the head of the Aryan Nation, the white, like, skinhead, because it started in a prison, and the prison was only like 4 miles away. So all the people's families moved into that area. And obviously I didn't know about that or anything, but the friend that I had was African American, and we were walking through the park, and we got jumped by like 5 or 6 people, and they took our shoes. And I think it's my favorite part because I always realized how scary, or when I think about that, like how scared I was. And then when I was writing the book, I got to relive it a little bit, and I realized I actually didn't get scared. I actually pretended that I was this warrior, and I got beat up, but I liked that memory going from the box of, oh, that was a very scary moment, to I got to put it into a box of like, oh, I was actually kind of proud of myself. And it worked out good because my brother came and beat them all up and took all their shoes. And then he beat me up for that. But yeah, I think I like that part because it made a real memory change from like, oh wow, that was a bad memory, but now it's not so bad.
I'm glad I asked the question, not question.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. It's amazing how our memories can change us as we revisit them. We do have time for one more question, if anyone has one. All right.
Wolf, do you have a
Wolf,
question?
would you like to ask a question?
Not feeling it. All right, well, in that case, thank you to our audience for being here, and thank you so much, Adriana and James, for a really beautiful discussion. Thanks for being here.